Greetings and welcome to GatherVerse Women's Health Summit, the second edition, 2026. We're so happy to have each of you join us today for this very special GatherVerse 41st Global Summit. When I was young and just becoming an entrepreneur, a tragedy struck in my life. My mother, she had a heart condition. And ultimately, she succumbed to this condition itself. I don't talk about this publicly and often, but someone asked me, why this summit? Inevitably, what happened, I believe, was purposed. But for me, in the consideration of the exploration of medicine and technology itself, and the advances of where we've been and what we've arrived to, but so much further to go, this and more set me on the pursuit of the study at the intersection of medicine and health. And in this pursuit, I began to understand that when it comes to medicine, when it comes to health, and women in particular, there's such a disbalance of technical innovation. And at the rate and the rapid succession of hyperscale at which technology emerges from the ecohabitat itself, we must fill the gap. Not only for the preservation of the scale of technology, but more so of how this technology persists and interacts in our daily lives, whether in the surgical theater, whether in interaction with practitioners, and the tools that specialists and surgeons use around the world, whether it's with telemedicine, or the various other 29 different departments that make up the typical average hospital. We're in an unprecedented time of technical innovation and scale, unlike anything we've ever known and will ever know. With AI being as persistent and as aggressive as it is in its scale, in its rapid succession, we realize that there is a disbalance when it comes to who's building these models, who's building these platforms, these multi-headed agentic systems, if you will. And we'll find out that the vast majority in the world of over 1,800,000 models are made by men. And we celebrate everyone that has the opportunity to innovate. But we must be careful on the cultural and intercultural contribution of technology that's made, not just for us when it comes to early adoption and subscribing and using, but also for how it also will impact us and be so involved in our lives in ways we've never even fathomed, if you will. With GatherVerse, we address these issues and more head on. And we do this at the intersection of emerging technologies with human first considerations of innovation and education, accessibility, community development, equality, safety, privacy, wellness, ethics, compassion, and more. We explore technologies such as physical AI and when it comes to XR and extended reality. We assemble global hearts and speakers from around the world to share with us from their lens perspective and to celebrate the various perspectives transmetropolitan, transcontinental. When you think about the magnitude of this opportunity to even have such a summit, it can reward us with expression that can lead so many of you that have come to join us at GatherVerse.live. Thank you. And the various social streams that you're meeting at Facebook or Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and more, Blue Sky, that can lead and hopefully spark an inspiration for you or your colleagues who you're sitting watching this with and sharing these moments with together, that would spark an inspiration to innovate humanely with the consideration per this special GatherVerse occasion that when we innovate under the vestiges or auspices of medical innovation, that we must take the consideration that it's not sufficient just for women in particular to use these tools, but so much more importantly, to build them. We're set to launch our first global roundtable. We have an assortment of various speakers with us, leaders, if you will, that have come to join us for this very special kickoff. I started off with this speaking about my mother. She's in my heart and very alive to this day, and I'm thankful. But when I think about with the little bit of time that each of us get to contribute, for me, I wonder if there's a thing that we could innovate that could prevent someone else from experiencing such fate. Perhaps we'll find this out together. May our gather be well. Greetings and welcome to each of you. We'd ask that each of you mute your mics, please, as I'll be your moderator for this very special roundtable session. We're so happy to see each of you that have come to join us here for this roundtable discussion on women's health now. Panelists, before we begin, a few things. Audience, a few things. We'll be asking questions that are not only on the screen, but we will be going impromptu and at times a rapid fire succession, and we will be jumping around. There's much to unpack, and there's much to arrive to, and we want to be able to extract as much as we can, especially from each of you whom we've had the pleasure of having you before, and we know your capabilities and things that you have to share and say. And with that said, I'd like to call on each of you to briefly let us know who you are, what you're presently doing in this world, and more importantly, for GatherVerse, what inspired you to be here today? Chantel, permit us to begin with you.
Christopher, always good to be back here. So I have a question for the ladies. What if you could choose to be sexy instead of waiting to be chosen? You see, I work with women who have been everything to everyone for so long that they've spent years believing that they don't really matter. And unlike most coaches, I don't just give strategy. I help women architect the confidence that they've forgotten that they even had. I've written a book on breaking the chains of shame, and the women that I've worked with have built the confidence to be able to say yes to their desires. And to me, that's the sexiest thing you can do for yourself. Why I've decided to be here at the GatherVerse event today, much like Christopher, I don't have a personal link to women's health were, but I have studied so much about women, and we are different. Yes, we're human, but we are different. Our physiology is different. And I really think we need to shine a light on it. And I'm really, really glad to be able to start this conversation. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you so much, Chantel, and thank you for sharing from this lens perspective. We're very happy to have you once again. Anisha, welcome.
Hi, Christopher. It's good to be back here. I am from Texas and I work in tech as a big data engineer. And what motivated me to be part of this panel is I did lose someone, like as you shared your story, I did lose someone who was a mother figure to me, to a lot of problems. And it was few years back, and I don't really talk about it publicly as well because it left a hole in my heart. And I think it's related to a lot of is related to physical health and not being treated properly, and also mental health. So I think like spreading awareness about like women's health and how women and men are completely different, like their bodies are completely different, and everything should be like spread across everyone, and like spread across more everywhere, everyone in the world. So I think that's another reason that I wanted to be a part of this panel.
Thank you for sharing that, Anisha, and our condolences to that person that was special to you and well in safekeepings as well. We're very happy to have you
Thank
return
you.
to us once again. Dr. Good, welcome.
Hi, Christopher. Thanks for the invitation. I am the founder of Good Body, Good Brain, because the brain is carried around by the body, and we have to take really good care of it because we want to take really good care of our brain, and we want to take good care of our brain for a very, very long time. I deal with women very much like Chantel who don't believe they're worthy enough of their own self care because they've been giving so much that their cup is totally empty. And there's a huge gender bias in our medical system today, especially among autoimmune diseases, which I hope to bring out a little bit further. And it's very much related to the X chromosome. So I'm looking forward to all the panelists and everything we have to share today.
Thank you, Dr. Good, for sharing that perspective. And we are certainly happy to have you join us again for this very special roundtable and summit. Dr. Garcia.
Good evening, actually from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I am from the US, from Florida, but I have been traveling extensively the last 7 or 8 months all over Southeast Asia, representing my global consulting company called SoulScript Global. Unlike the other ladies, thank you for the confidence. Thank you for your journey share. And Dr. Sally Good, looking forward to what you have to share. I'm very strong on advocacy, having led 54 congressional advocacy meetings in Washington, D.C., Capitol Hill, influencing the change of laws such as ending child marriage laws, representing UNICEF. I've met with governments, parliaments, first ladies, you name it, as part of this consultancy. And I'm just looking forward to learning from each of you. I've learned to redefine what empowerment truly is, because in the world of women, it became so oversaturated with women empowerment that really offered no solutions other than social gatherings. So being with like-minded, very powerful, authentic women like yourself, ready to drive in solutions that are effective and long-lasting, is why I'm here tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. We're very happy to have you join us. Shall we begin? I want to start off not with the question that's on the screen, but the one that's sitting here in my heart. We talk about wellness, we talk about medical technology. It's ubiquitous, it's around the world. There's different practices, there's Eastern, Western, and more. There are so many different practices of medicine, known and unknown to all of us. And from our various small corners of the world, we have been raised up in various ecosystems to have and draw to an appreciation on how wellness has impacted us personally and how we've seen it affect others, whether it's the lack of wellness and opportunity for others, maybe it's a lack of accessibility, maybe it is in systems that are highly progressive or very effective. We've seen all different types of technology as we've grown in generational succession, and we've heard stories from our elders on how it was for them to visit that room or to visit those rooms, whether having surgery in various types of ways that we can imagine being in today. I won't get too descriptive, and perhaps someone else will. But saying all that to say is that medicine, the study therein, and wellness and health, we have a different perspective on that here in 2026, I believe, just from your introductions. And Dr. Good, I want to kick off with you. I want you to pick up where you left off. I hear the words about X chromosome and Y chromosome, but more so, I want you to briefly express to us, what is the study of medicine and the impact of women today for you? And Chantel, Anisha, Dr. Garcia, we'll be calling on you very soon and right around the corner. Please, briefly, Dr. Good, could you share?
Yes, I started out as a medical technology in the field of immunohematology in a hospital. And I took a lot of classes with med students. They were given a very didactic, structured type of thing. Oh, the nutrition, maybe 8 or 9 weeks. You ask a doctor how they would treat diabetes now, you'd have to go to a diabetes specialist, because there's just the body of knowledge have gotten so large, and the amount of time that MDs have to incorporate that into their practice, because they're just running from patient to patient to patient, driven by insurance concerns, insurance demands. So medicine as what we would like for it to be, particularly for women. And I used to think going to a woman doctor would solve that problem, but it hasn't. I've actually been treated poorly by women doctors more so than men doctors. And I don't know what that bias is. Maybe they have a certain constraint put on them. But I am fortunate that in my practice, I am found a group of women only radiologists who only read breast tissue. And they do it for my local hospital. And they have consults with every patient after they have their mammography and their breast wellness thing. And it is a huge innovation. So we're so behind, Christopher. Over here, emergent technology, we're up here in the stars. Medicine as we know it, even the docs that are 35, 40 years old are so behind in the possibility of what's there. And I'll talk about X a little bit more. It's a little geeky. I love geeky.
We'll take geeky as it comes, and come as you are. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Good. Audience, we think about the study and the expression and all the types of NGOs and nonprofit organizations that have been dedicated towards women's breast cancer, and about the study of women's breast and the health therein. And to Dr. Good's point, there is such a dichotomy when we look at the advances of technology. You would think that we've been able to complement that in the advances of study in medicine when it comes to the human body anatomically. But we have much to go, don't we? I think about this, Anisha, when we think about what Dr. Good has expressed when it comes to available for those practitioners that are getting together. They're huddled up in small rooms to this day, finding ways to study and exploration. I was told that there's some 9,500 medical journals that come out per day, and of which 2,500 is studied and advanced and written specifically for cancer studies. We think about the opportunity for prevention. We have all experienced, I believe at this point, each of us, someone close in our lives, or people that we at least know that have been impacted by the passing away of our loved ones, and perhaps strangers that we see on television. And Nisha, share with us, because the direction that you took this, when that led you to this inspirational opportunity to join us, I'd like to know, what is your present and most important focus when it comes to health and the impact of women today?
So I think the healthcare system right now, like most of the research that is ongoing in healthcare, is based on some standardized like model, which is mostly male-centric research, clinical research that I'll say. and not a lot of focus is put into research which is more woman centric. And I think that is one of the leading problems, like the disconnect between like how women's diseases are treated. For example, there are certain like as I think Sally mentioned, autoimmune diseases, like those are not really treated properly, because the healthcare system that we have in the current society is based on a certain standardized model, because and it follows a certain pattern. But when it comes to women's health, you really need to study how women changes over the years, because every phase for a woman is different. And like when a woman is like a baby and toddler and puberty, like young adult, and also like during the early adult stages and after menopause. So there's a lot of stages which actually a woman faces throughout her life, and I think everything should be taken into account when healthcare systems are built. I mean, that's one of the things I feel there's a huge disconnect between the healthcare system and how women are treated in today's world.
I find that fascinating on a number of different fronts. To take you, Anisha, and I will have a follow-up with you just briefly, and Chantel, right around the corner, as well as with you, Dr. Garcia. You're coming from the great state of Texas, I believe. And in Texas, there is great contributions when it's contributed, especially in Houston, to medical exploration. But we also know that there's various rules and statutes, ordinances, and covenants that change it from very state to state, which it is what it is. And we won't go too political, if you will, today, but feel free. We'll take that as well. But we think about that, and you talked about the successive growth of a child, even from the embryonic stage, right, from fetal position, even before this precious child leaves their mother's womb. And we think about all the different areas and the necessary steps to be able to understand how modern medicine and preventive care can be able to help them along this journey. Because if we realize it, I just really appreciate this particular summit. Thank you for part of this inspiration. We think about there's a journey that each of us have been on. There is a journey of survivability every single moment of the day, when we, not just when we come from our mother's womb, but while we're still yet in it. I sit there and think about the magnitude of that, Anisha, and it really just kind of just impressed upon me right now with you saying that. And so thank you for sharing that, and we'll have more to share. And then Chantel, we will come to you in a moment with something. Dr. Garcia, what are your thoughts on that, with what was just expressed? And also give us what it is that you find the most important focal point for you when it comes to health and the impact of women.
So, two parts to this. I noticed and I've observed, right? You talked about your personal loss with your mother. My mother passed away in 2005. And that is when I truly realized the breakdown in medical systems in the United States. There's a lot of bureaucratic red tape that she had to prove to say that she really was in stage 4 cancer. And at that time, back before she was diagnosed, holistic care, anything organic was unheard of. It was more like a cushy lifestyle. And yet the healing was found in not what the traditional or scientific medicine cure was being provided, rather than that's where probably inherited from, she became her own patient advocate because of those bureaucratic red tapes. Right. And she proved, the first time she was diagnosed, they told her she had less than 6 months to live, stage 4 cancer. And my mother was a very strong woman of faith. So she told the doctor, thank you, but no thank you, because I'm on God's time, not yours. And decided to do medical research on her own, managed to reverse the cancer with no chemo from stage 4 to 0, lived another 8 years. And then when it did come back, it was a brain tumor. And at that point, it was too late. But during that 8 years, she basically lived her purpose. So she died knowing that she's fulfilled whatever God had told her to do. Right. And so fast forward. Today, I've traveled, as I said, extensively, almost, I would just say close to almost a year. I'll just say 9 months conservatively in Southeast Asia. And yet there's such a disparity between Western hospitals and how they treat patients. And over here in Malaysia, I've been to Thailand, I've even been to the Philippines, and the affordability of healthcare. Let's start with that. With no insurance, you can get a pair of eyeglasses, get your eyes checked, and your prescription basically for $27 or $30 equivalent in the Philippines. Over here in Malaysia, and this I was inviting Christopher, I was like, come join me in Thailand, come join me in Malaysia, right? Here in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, another major hub city, you can get a full head to toe executive checkup. They run every single test possible for $300 equivalent. And so a lot of expats and foreigners fly into Kuala Lumpur because of the fact that they can get a full body, everything you can think of, put you in a nice hotel like the Ritz-Carlton on top of that as you wait for your appointment. But the handle that they have of truly, it's like old school doctor. Do you remember when everybody used to carry a medical bag and visited patients home? They have that type of white glove handling for everybody that they actually care. Then I go back to our Western, America's supposed to be, and this is nothing political, the top of the game. But yet we've all had personal experiences of even trying to get a clinical visit and how rushed you are. So today the disparity is still this. Women have to prove that they're really suffering. So instead of proactive and prevention, they still have us prove, what are you feeling? The 10 million questions that we have to answer, because we're emotional based creatures. So for whatever it is that there is a disparity, it's prove me you're sick and prove me you're not feeling good. That is the current prevalent conditions. Even I've come across even some other situations in other countries, but the prove us.
It's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Garcia. We tend to think, and I do believe here, and as I sit here in Silicon Valley, that our medicine we feel is exceptional, so long as you can afford it. But
Yes.
from the places that I've been around the world, I've also come to appreciate that there's great exception and there's a great quality, and in some regards, humanely better treatment on how you're approached and how people and humans are approached when it comes to medicine. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Garcia. We'll have more to get to. And jumping to the other side of the moon here, Chantel, we began with your side of things on sexiness and intimacy, which are very important aspects of what we look at when it comes to wellness. Can you draw out for us what is the focal point of wellness for you and what you're looking at here presently in 2026 March?
Christopher, you know me, I always like going a little bit contrary, and perhaps not where we expect to go. So I'm going to really pick up on something that Dr. Garcia said. We've all heard the stories of women and people who have, quote, healed themselves. And I really think if we take a step back and we look at society and technology, you spoke about the advancement of technology, the advancement of medicine. And it's no secret that knowledge is just growing every single day. We're in this barrage of knowledge all the time.
Sure.
Here's the thing, when you're the individual, when you're the patient, we've got to start learning to take a holistic approach, because this doctor is going to give one diagnosis, the specialist is going to give another regime, your friend is going to give more advice. And what's happening again and again and again, and I see it on social media, is we are so disempowered. We throw our hands up and we say, what do I do? And we're looking for strategies all the time. But what we as women need to learn to do is to step into the fullness of who we are, to go within. We have the intuition. We have the answers. We have the wisdom of women from our ancestral lines. This is our gift. We have to learn to settle into what is best for me right now. And I think this is what Dr. Garcia's mum did in her experience, and what so many women have done. And the more knowledge proliferates, the more I believe women need to go back to that place of, who am I? What is best for me right now? So that's my perspective.
Chantel, where does that courage come from?
I've got a Ph.D. in the School of Life, my friend. I've walked some hard roads.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you for sharing, Chantel. We'll be back with you in just a moment. I think about the words thus far that have been expressed in spoken audience. It struck me in our first Women's Health Summit in 2025, the various perspectives and how powerful these testimonies, if you will, that have been shared. I feel equally the same already thus far, if we've barely just begun, but as quick as it comes, as quick as it goes. I think about something, Dr. Good, think about the Hippocratic Oath that each practitioner and doctor takes, if you will, around the world, and the sanctity of it therein. But I think about how uncomplimented that is when it comes to engineers, Anisha, and the responsibility that we have when it comes to what we innovated, what we built for our practitioners that are under the guise, if you will, of the Hippocratic Oath. I want to start with you, Dr. Good, briefly, and then to Anisha briefly on this particular twin subject of our engineers or technologists, from your viewpoint, Dr. Good, are we doing enough, and is there enough alignment with practitioners of the world when it comes to hyperscale of innovation itself?
Well, I fully believe that AI is going to find the cure for cancer, for diabetes, and for ever other major illnesses in the world. I believe it already exists. I believe that there are keepers of the secrets that don't want them to be escaped, because diabetes is the number one pharma industry in America. We are forcing people to eat poor quality foods. If we compare our foods to Europe, many of them have been banned that we eat, some people on a daily basis, produce, et cetera, et cetera. So engineering, I think engineering might be the actual emergent technology, might actually save ourselves from ourselves. But it's going to take a lot of education, and it's going to take a lot of, and I'll ditto to Chanel, it's going to take some boldness on the part of women to step forward and realize that people in white coats are not priests, are not any better than we are, and we know our bodies more than anybody else. In 06, I was diagnosed with MS. And for 5 years, I was on a daily shot of Copaxone, which was about $2,000 a month. After 5 years, I went to my neurologist and I said, I'm not getting any worse. In fact, I'm getting pretty much better. I'm doing yoga. Nothing's happened to my brain. I want to do a full MRI scan, and I'll make a deal with you. If I don't have any flares in my brain or in my spine, I stop all this nonsense. He says, deal. I did the MRI, not a single spot, no flare in my brain or my whole nervous system. So I stopped the Copaxone. That's been 25, 30 years ago. Here I am, still thinking well, still moving well. And what was that? He believes it was a compressed nerve. That they couldn't figure out what it was. And MS was just a diagnosis that was most convenient at the time. And with physical therapy, I got better. So we know our bodies, and but we have to be bold. And that made me realize I have to step up to the plate, and I have to be adamant to the point of being the word bitchy to get what I need from medicine these days.
Well, we're so happy and glad that you're joining us here today in 2026 from your experiences from 20 to 30 some odd years ago. Dr. Good, you touched on something that's very poignant and rather apropos for this discussion. Anisha, please bear with us. We'll be there in just a second. As a quick follow-up, Dr. Good, we talk about big pharmaceutical and nutraceutical, if you will, but we also talk about machines, but as the intimacy that Chantel just spoke about, to know your own body and not to be completely reliant on the physician. And I do believe that's important for many reasons, but to know that, I hear that, but yet I wonder, even based on an expression of yours, where does the machine play the role in this dance, this delicate dance between the practitioner, between the patient, and then the human heart?
Well, as you see, as machines become more knowledgeable of who we are as humans. And even Amadeus just recently said he's not sure that Claude actually might have some degree of consciousness. He's not sure about it. But what I believe is that we can use the machine, particularly AI. We already have programs that research the proper cancer treatment for given diagnoses because it searches the entire database of the world. And before, oncologists used to sit for hours trying to find and research. Now we've got that at our fingertips. It's going to give us more information faster and better. And I think that the technology of detection from an AI and an engineering joined, talking about hardware plus software plus visioning bodies on a cellular level. I'm not talking about just big structures. I'm talking about going down to the mitochondria and looking at what things are really happening there and giving us more information of how we can do our own self-repair.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Good. We'll be back there in a moment to be able to meet with you on the cellular level and to be able to explore perhaps deeper artificial mitochondria, if this is where we might be headed. I sit here and think about this in each of the words that have been expressed thus far. And with you, I ask as a fellow technologist, and there's other technologists that are in and woven throughout this summit, if you will. And all of us have some type of level of intimacy with technology today, whether we care for or whether we choose to or not. But this one squarely goes at the dichotomous layer when we asked Dr. Good about the Hippocratic Oath, the very intimate oath that practitioners make in their lives. I know that my mother, she was a nurse, and all of my grandmothers, and I was raised by nurses, if you will, and in such a very different way, and doctors, if you will. I think about, Anisha, the responsibility and an inherent responsibility of the technologist, especially with this type of technology that is interacting with us. It sees, has conversations with us, in some ways reads our disposition and we read it, and it turns around and believes that it itself has a disposition. And as Dr. Good just mentioned, Adira Amade now doesn't know if Claude Opus is conscious or not. He can't answer that. I've often asked, what happens when the technology becomes more advanced than a technologist? And now that's come to pass. Anisha, what's the inherent responsibility that you find that engineers throughout the world have in this present modern time, an era of hyperscale, especially at the intersection of health?
So, as a person who works in AI and technology, and also someone who is also interested in like biological research, I feel like, yeah, emerging technologies have played a good role in like advancing biological research when it comes to certain areas like drug discovery and all those areas. But there are certain parts which I feel has not been like developed a lot. For example, as women, we understand our own bodies, and anyone, like even men, they understand their own bodies. But when you actually talk to AI, like when you talk to an AI in general, and you're asking them, oh, I have this and this going on in my body, and these are my symptoms, like there is a chance of misdiagnosis by the AI. So I think and all of the facts that, for example, if you're talking to chat gpt, or you're talking to Claude, or any other LLM, right? And you are telling the LLM that, okay, these are the symptoms that I am facing, and instead of going to the doctor, and what should I do in order to treat those, sometimes it might misdiagnose, and that misdiagnosis can cause a lot of issues in the future, and it might be fatal also. So I think as technologists, we should also understand that whatever like outputs that the AI or any kind of AI tool is providing has to be fact checked a lot of times before you actually showcase that to the public, because that can lead to a lot of errors. And in technology, you like when it comes to technology apart from healthcare, it's like it is a lot more less risky. But when it comes to health and diagnosis of certain illnesses or symptoms, I think there is always a chance of mixed diagnosis, and something leads to something, and you end up believing in something which you're not supposed to believe. So I feel as people who are in technology, there's a huge responsibility on them to understand that whatever the output is given by AI is not completely fact checked. I mean, yeah, 80% is fact checked, but what about the rest 20%? So that has to be fact checked as well, because a lot of problems can arise from that.
Let's go a little bit further up the mountain, Anisha, and this is right back at you. As much as Dr. Good talked about the cellular level and the mitochondria, let's go into the engineering development technical level. Are we ready, from your lens perspective, as someone that works in this, in your daily given doings of what you do in your labors, when it comes to AI innovation? Are we ready to invite that level of intimacy that Chantel has brought to us today when it comes to our own bodies? Are we ready to reveal that level of intimacy to these machines, knowing that there are things that it does get wrong, but there are many things it does get right? Is the world ready for this level of intimacy? Because ChatGPT today, we're dealing with language models and we're typing on screens and devices, desktop labs, tablets, and laptops, if you will. But now that we're getting further into not just interacting and typing on screens, but sitting and having whole, full conversations, relationships with the elongated, long extended memory, and then thinking about hyper realistic immersive simulations or real time augmented projections, looking and staring at these machines in anatomical structure one to another. Are we ready for this level of intimacy of reveal when it comes to our health, our bodies?
Um, on a personal level, I don't think so, because I would not trust an AI with my personal health issues instead of going to the doctor, because a doctor has studied through years of experience, has years of experience. Also, like a chat GPT or a language model cannot just overtake a human experience of, like, practical experience of a doctor. So I feel we are ready, but not ready. I think we are like 20% to 30% there. But personally, I wouldn't trust a language model with my personal health issues. I would rather go to a doctor and tell them that these are my health issues that I'm facing, rather than talking to a chat GPT or a language model about my health issues.
Are you more comfortable with that doctor using AI in her or his tool set?
Yeah, that's another difference. So for example, if I go to a doctor and the doctor combines his or her practical knowledge with the knowledge of an AI, that is much more like practical, I feel, because you are combining your practical knowledge, like, which you have gained over the years, with the knowledge of an AI. So it's not just only one siloed knowledge. It's like practical knowledge that you gained over the years after seeing multiple patients, and then you're combining that knowledge with the knowledge for an, like, LLM output. So I think that is much more like uh, trustworthy, I feel, rather than just trusting an AI.
And Chantel, are you comfortable with this intimacy of the relationship between machine and human and where we're finding it today here in 2026?
Not at all. Not at all. Because I think it's outsourcing our own wisdom. And, if I look at this panel, we are fortunate women. But let's not forget the woman in the street. Let's not forget the woman who feels like she doesn't have options, who feels like she can't afford to go to a doctor and she's forced to let ChatGPT diagnose, right? And this is what's happening. What about if we strengthen that woman holistically and we give her access to the wisdom that she already has access to deep within her? What about if we strengthen that as opposed to strengthen her ties to the machine? Just a thought.
It's very interesting
It's
that
very interesting.
relationship between the patient and the doctor today still has more work to be done, still has more trek to give, still has more access to give. Some people don't enjoy the experiences of what Dr. Garcia talked about, of what she's experiencing throughout her tour in Asia now, with the decency that's placed in these specific countries and the lack of therein in so many other different cities around the world. I sit there and think about that, Chantal. All of a sudden, people haven't even began to appreciate the relationship with the doctor with the heartbeat. And now we may be propagated to be able to have a relationship with the doctor without one. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Garcia, as you find yourself through the vestiges of Southeast Asia and throughout these very beautiful lands that many of us have never been to and traveled to, but you find yourself there? And are you a bit surprised with the level of decency compared to that which you may not have experienced or that you see other people not experiencing in this very country, here in the great state or the great country of the United
Absolutely.
States?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the dentist that I went to see here, that they only charge $15 for a full teeth cleaning with x-rays, and another $15 for a filling. And I said, my goodness. And the bedside manners, as we call it back in those old days, the professionalism and the care and the follow-up. And I said, but that's because they're still focused on patient care relationships. And that is a huge difference that I've seen in Southeast Asian countries. Despite even the modern day technology, it boiled down to one on one relationships. And I'm going to take it to what is the current mental health crisis, especially facing our young generations. I know that Christopher and I had conversations about this because that's one of the things that I'm addressing at different universities right now is this. 70% of Gen Z would rather have a committed relationship with AI than humans. That doesn't even touch on any medical, but that is what the Gen Zs are now wanting, right? And mental health crisis is now even on the rise. We're not even talking about what we're talking about today. That is another wave or tsunami of what is about to hit. The disconnection of relationships, the disconnection of communication, the disconnection of family foundations. It is not the same. In fact, in my recent talk with the University of Technology in Cambodia, just about a week and a half ago, and I covered about 8 classes in 2 days, I've asked the students, how many of you have best friends? And in an average class size of 60, only 2 people raised their hand. And I remember in my high school in Unit 2, yes, Chantel, right? 2 people. And I said, okay, how many of you have close friends? Nobody raised their hands. These are the Gen Zs. And I said, how many of you still have parents? And they just kind of started laughing and raised their hand. But this is becoming more and more epidemic as we speak. So when I see, yes, the older generation, let's say millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, when we do go to the clinics here, even in Southeast Asia, it's still that patient care. And that's what people, you've got very low cost medical, checkups and the care, but it's the relationships that's honored in the different countries here in Asia. But then on the other side, as technology grows, right, we have the other epidemic that's going to be a pandemic when it hits the mental health crisis because the new generation do not have a relationship with each other anymore. So this is, more and more, there's work to be done, ladies, in so many sectors that this is the true calling for impactful collaboration. True collaboration, not competition anymore. There's no choose your lane anymore, especially with what's about to happen in the next 2 years. We need to truly put our gifts together. We really need to put our calling together and work in teams. Because if AI is, it's evolving as we speak, then humans, we were still given our own digital imprint that can never be duplicated, called our fingerprint in our brains, right? Is that this is now the call for all women in all sectors to really find each other, form groups of, basically be solutions driven and form those groups. This is no longer the motivational, inspirational era.
We thank you, Dr. Garcia, for your words of expression and your admonishment. I sit here under the sound of each of your voices today at this 41st Global Summit, Dr. Good. I sit here and listen to these words, Chantel. I listen to these expressions, Anisha. And Dr. Good, I sit here and listen at this 41st Global Summit. You can imagine we've had thousands of speakers. We've had hundreds of roundtables and firesides and talks. And I think about the immensity and the magnitude of what Dr. Garcia just told us about the ratio and the comparison of the relationship between human and machine. And I sit here and I say to myself, have we already become too close to these machines? And they're at their lowliest state of what they are today, and there'll be nothing as we know them by this time next year, let alone within months as we look at the rapid progress that we're seeing these machines. I sit here and think about that, but what I also am led to appreciation of many things of what Dr. Garcia said, including the need for us to arrive together. We shouldn't have to wait for nonprofit dollars and NGOs to be able to take up the chalice and to take up the mantle of impact when it comes to what these technologies are doing to us. Heart to heart, group to group, as Dr. Good had already expressed, that there's a group of women that are sitting here studying and the practitioners when it comes to women's breast, if you will, and the exploration therein. And they're sitting here, and I don't think that they needed a nonprofit budget and they needed some big appetite of desire for someone to fund an initiative as opposed to using what their God-given talents were, if you will, to go and do something about it. I sit here and think about the need for community development, which is one of our GatherVerse standards, and I just don't think that we have considered the enormity of the challenge that has arisen. And the thing is, this is so persistent of a technology. I believe that once many people understand the magnitude of which is upon us, in many ways, Dr. Good, to make change, I do believe that it will be too late. If there's never been more of an important time for these type of discussions, then I don't know when. Dr. Good, could you give us more on that, of the opportunity of what we stand to face when those women that you know and that you're part of get together and sit there and huddle over, looking and bearing over paper an expression for solution?
Two thoughts. First of all, the seasons of the life of women that Anisha brought up, we're all in different seasons. And different seasons have different challenges and different ways of working with our bodies, etc. What we're facing, not only with the Gen Zs, is the other end of that spectrum. We have the biggest aging population that we've ever seen in America, and it is coming fast. We have so many more people who are so ill, and I'm not just talking about dementia and all the strokes and high blood pressure and diabetes, that our healthcare system is going to be so overloaded that we've got coming and we've got people going. You know, I work in gero psych. One day a week, I volunteer in nursing homes and I do assessments for Medicaid. So I get to see the progression of when I first meet someone to a year later, what happens when they're put in a nursing home, they're confined to a wheelchair, they have a little socialization, they're eating that food, and I mean that food that has little, I mean, it has some nutrition, but it doesn't look pretty, it doesn't look nice. All the things that degrade. And I'll talk about the dignity of care and the dignity of life. There are CNAs, there are aides who've been doing this job for 25 years, and they love their patients. They love them. But there's only so much you can do. So what is going to happen when we reach, we're getting ready to reach this apex that's going to go like that. We've got about 7 to 10 years before we reach that point when Gen Z no longer has relationships, and our adult population are all needing incredible amount of health care. I'm not sure if our HHS secretary at 71 can save us, but he's trying his best. He's trying to get us to eat better. He's trying to get us to exercise. He's trying to get us to do those things. How can technology, the emergent technology, how can it help us with, first of all, learning about self-care, education? We've got great apps. Christopher Brown, we've got the Peace app, PeaceVerse, we've got that. We can be learning self-care. We've got great apps for that. But it takes self-determination to turn the machine on and actually interact with it and say, yes, I need to practice self-care. Yes, I need to do that. And all that comes from inside, from the core, from the intuition. And just like Chantel says, how do we reach those women that are intersectional, that are of color, that have never had good health care? They've never seen good health care modeled. Their parents have never had it. They're eating the most bare minimum. They're doing drive-throughs. Their whole world is fast food. How are you going to help those women with emergent technology? How are you going to get them to realize that health is the only thing that we can help preserve to have a good, long, vital life. Here we are.
I sit here and think about, and thank you for sharing that, Dr. Good and Anisha. I sit here and think about the necessity for more human innovators. Is this the hour for such time? Is this the hour where we need to see more human innovation and more human impact of scale, less than machines? I think we're in desperate need of a renaissance, if you will. I'll stray away from the word revolution, but of a renaissance of innovators that are building and doing heartfelt work, heartfelt innovation, entrepreneurs that see the other ethical imbalance and to have a need to innovate, not from a place of driven high profit, which it's fine to raise and drive capital. I work with such entrepreneurs every day, but more work towards the heart that may not be as financially rewarding, but can be far more sustaining. Are we heading into that necessity of time, Anisha, from what you're looking at when it comes to innovation and those of us that work and build and work with these machines? Is this needed now?
It is needed, but also like as everyone mentioned that along with the human interception, I think there's a need to understand people better, like understand the relationships. Like also another aspect that I'd like to touch upon is like the mental health, because in today's world I think mental health also affects physical health. Like when you are down mentally, you are not in a good mental place, it affects your physical health, and it might lead to a lot of like binge eating, and it might lead to like a lot of eating disorders. So I think those factors need to be taken into account when it comes to human innovation, and not just focus on like some created models, right? Like certain, for example, people of color, like women of color, and there's a lot of cultural stereotypes. Like I am from India, and where I come from, there's a lot of cultural stereotypes across like women's health, because uh, a lot of the times women are not made to speak up, they don't really speak up. For example, when you actually go through after a person gives birth, you go through postpartum, and certain times postpartum depression causes a lot of mental health issues and physical health issues as well. And where I am from, it's not like culturally acceptable to actually speak about mental health issues. But I would say that with a lot of AI and everything, it is changing. Like the society is changing there as well. As per Western culture, it is actually much more advancing right now. But I would say a lot of innovation is still important, and a lot of focus has
Okay.
comes to mental health, physical health, and also other innovations in terms of complete healthcare, I'd say.
Thank you, Anisha, for addressing that. Mental health has been so huge with GatherVerse. It was really our second focus summit that we had. I remember when we started GatherVerse, we went with over 10,000 attendees, had 2 months to put together what is now GatherVerse. And the very next summit, I thought it prudent to be able to have a mental wellness summit where other people thought that we should talk more about technology. And I think about the relationship and the impact of technology, as so many people have expressed, each of you have expressed. And I just realized then, as we realize now, the impact that technology, as our next roundtable will heavily get into, the impact of technology and has on our mental wellness, our physiology, our physical health, and even our spiritual health, at least from Mindland's perspective. Chantel, we think about this, and we're going to end with each of you giving a very brief moment, and then we have another roundtable to listen to. I sit here and think about, coming back to what we talked about, that we must know our own selves. And when we find this exploration of coming to better understand our own bodies, our own health, will that lead us to an opportunity to relate to one another even better? What are the benefits of that, Chantal? Let's leave it to the benefits of that.
Ultimately, Christopher, I think we've got to, this interplay with human and technology is very much an outsourcing of responsibility. And for me, it's a rallying call to take personal responsibility once again. We are human. We will always be human, and human created the machine. Let's not forget that. We are the masters. Um, so when it comes to taking responsibility for our health, for our lives, for our well-being, for everything that we do in this life, I
Sure.
like to use a ball analogy, right? So we all talk about how we juggle all these balls, and we've got all these balls up in the air at any given time. The question is it a rubber ball or is it a glass ball? Your health is a glass ball. Your work is a rubber ball. It can bounce back. But your health, if you drop it, can it bounce back? That is the priority. That is the question we've got to ask ourselves as women. Are we juggling with glass balls? And how do we start shifting our priorities?
Thank you very much, Chantel, for those enlightening and deep heartening words. Dr. Garcia, in our final closing seconds that we have here, and then Dr. Good, and then we'll close it with you, Dr. Anisha. Dr. Garcia, how do we bring more decency to this world? And how do you take what you're experiencing in Asia right now and bring that to the world?
Thank you for that beautiful question, Christopher. As we come into close, I always say this on global stages, no matter what part of the continent God throws me in at this point. As women, we birth nations, women raise nations, and women move nations. There's no amount of technology that can duplicate the very DNA that births and raises children, and also the courage we all have. Forget about multitasking, the multi responsibilities that a woman can juggle, AI cannot compete with, especially when you put the human emotion and relationship as our core, because this is where we thrive in as women. It's
Sure.
in our inner relationships, interrelationships, and outer relationships. That is what makes us all successful. So do not forget the humanity portion of any different handling, that if we can just go back to the very core of Corinthians, what is love? Love is kind, love is patient, and just put your name there. Is Christopher loving? Is Christopher patient? Is he kind? Does he not boast? If we go back to the very essence of that, we're going to continue to thrive. And we can get the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas and the Gen Betas and all the ABCs that follows after that, as long as we do not lose our own value that God inherently had put on us.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. We're so very happy and very joyous, rather, to share stage with you today. And in the final closing seconds here, Dr. Good, we talked about so much. We talked about machines. We talked about interhealth. We've talked about decency. We've talked about engineering and scale. With all the culmination of that, from your lens perspective of being a practitioner for decades, what is it that you would have us to close out with for these brief moments?
I want to pick up on you talking about the impact of women having babies within their bodies, of growing a human. Within that girl baby are ovaries, are seeds. That girl baby, when she's born, those seeds will become more babies, both girl and boy. They all carry them within them. So each mother carries almost their grandchildren within their bodies. And when we start to think about that, we are the only creatures that can create humanity in that way, that we are so connected hormonally to our environment. Just the intuition that women have, the spider sense that we have, the things that Chantel has been talking about, how we are so connected to our environment, both inside and outside, that we can actually become teachers. We can teach AI what it means to be human. And AI is going to have to learn. It's learning now.
Sure.
But we want them to be taught what it means to be human by good humans, by people who have the best intentions, by people who want everyone to win and everyone to succeed. And how do we gather that up so that the bad actors don't get to hop in? So good intentions. God did not give us the spirit of fear, but the spirit of power, love, and a sound mind.
Thank you for sharing these intimate expressions and professional expressions, Dr. Good. We're very thankful for them. And in closing here, Anisha, we talked about that journey of that embryonic, that fetal, that baby, that child coming forth, and you help bring that to surface. We talk about this journey to where we find all of ourselves in adulthood, if you will. When we look at this, and we're here in 2026, we're still surviving. What do you believe in your heart as an engineer with everything that you're doing of the small contribution that Anisha will make based on what you've heard today? What do you believe your next steps should be and that you hope for to be when it comes to contributing towards this?
As I mentioned, one of the things that I wanted to do and want to do still, like, is bring awareness about like how a woman's body and mind is different from a man's body, and like the physiology in general is very different from a man. So I think that has to be like made aware in the society, that how a man thinks versus a woman thinks, and like in terms of like physical development as well, like as we go through the stages, like as I think Dr. Good and Dr. Garcia mentioned, there's a lot of like women hold that power, and like women are born with the eggs, right? And it's like grandmothers hold that, like you actually are born with those. So I think that has to be made aware, that how much power you actually hold and how much your body changes from one stage to another stage. uh, I would like to make a lot of people aware of that, because not a lot of people are aware. I feel like a lot of things are lacking. And when it comes to technology, you can actually integrate that into technology, like maybe build something which will create more awareness in society. I mean, it's not necessarily like just boast about like what is what, but just an app which can actually you can install on your devices, and it can help you understand a woman's body better, a woman's mind better, and how a woman thinks versus how a man thinks. So I think that is another step I would like to take in the coming future.
Think of you, each of you, leaders, women, in the presence of you, I am yet a student. We've gained so much. Audience, take time to follow them, to join them, not just to see, but to work with, to build with, and to hopefully be inspired by. We're preparing for our next GatherVerse roundtable discussion to go further on top of this well met foundation that was just laid before us. Thank you, each of you, and farewell. Our gather was well.
Greetings. Welcome to the second roundtable panel, GatherVerse Women's Health Summit 2026. I would first like to appreciate the first panel that really did quite justice to explain the state of women's health, where we are, where does technology come. On this particular panel, we are going to talk about technology in women's health, what helps and what harms. a lot of deep expressions were expressed during the first panel. And for me, this panel is just a continuum. We're going to answer some of their questions, and we're also going to explore further on this subject on technology. But before we go into that, I'd like to welcome my fellow panelists here to introduce themselves, to tell us who they are and why they were inspired to join us. Now, who do I start with? I will start with you, Stephanie. Tell us who you are, what inspired you to join us. And we will be brief because I believe we have a lot to tackle, and then we'll pass the baton on and we'll conclude the introductions with Kim. Stephanie, over to you.
Stephanie Sylvester, co-founder of Avatar Buddy, and I'm part here to just explore different ways of how to use AI upstream to support the medical and industry and amplify women's health.
Amazing. And we're happy to have you once again. It's always a pleasure to be in your presence. Aliyah, this is not your first time. Please tell us who you are and what inspired you to join us today.
Thank you. So my name is Aaliyah Gibbs. For my day job, I am an AI talent strategist for a corporation. So I work on upskilling engineers specifically. But what drew me to this panel specifically is I accidentally started a community. And I say accidentally, but it's really funny. I ended up going viral on Threads when I started speaking towards the nervous system, especially in regards to women's health and how stress shows up for high achieving professionals. And I've noticed in my own journey that I was stressed out. Despite being on these platforms and speaking and living my dreams, I was operating in a state of stress. And so now I'm really committed to seeing how I can leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to help prove some of the statistics related to stress and how they can impact women's health specifically. So I'm excited to talk about this conversation today. Thank you.
All right. Aliyah, that is inspiring. We want to learn more about this nervous system and what it really intrigued you to even start it and what AI can do about it. Kat, we want to hear from you. Tell us who you are and what inspired you to join us today.
Hi, everybody. Thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yes, perfectly.
Perfectly. Okay, great. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Kat King. I am an Army veteran, and I am also an XR creator and experimental filmmaker. Essentially, what I do is I just build technology, creative technology to help people manage their psychosis. And I also create immersive experiences to help destigmatize psychosis in general.
All right, Kat, I'm looking forward to learn what psychosis is, by the way. So thank you for joining us. You're in the right place. Tanya, this is not your first time. Bring it on. Tell us who you are. Okay, your mic is your mic, kindly.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi, Lynn. It is great to be here today. I'm Tanya Kellen. I'm founder and CEO of Kellen Content. We have a film and television and digital division where we create films, television series that are impactful for changing people's lives, transformational content. And then we have an XR immersive division where we look at transformational storytelling to enhance greater mental health and well-being outcomes. And right now we are in the middle of running our first